Once again, Black Friday is just around the corner. Consumers all around the world will engage with it either by taking advantage of the offers or by protesting and refusing to benefit from them. I would like to draw your attention to the impact of Black Friday on one particular consumer segment. My name is Gülen Sarial. I'm a professor of marketing conducting research on consumer well-being here at Copenhagen Business School. And today, I will explain you the impact of Black Friday on vulnerable consumers in our societies. Vulnerable consumers are generally described as individuals who are at risk of harm because their access to and control over resources is restricted. This limitation inhibits them to function effectively in the marketplace. There are two main ways to identify vulnerable consumers. The first approach focuses on the individual characteristics. For example, people with low income, those who are unemployed, have low education levels, are youth and elderly, or are part of a minority group. The second approach considers the context. It suggests that any consumer at any time can become part of the vulnerable consumer segment because of the interplay of the personal characteristics, social factors, and the economic market. So, for example, if you are going through a divorce or if you are experiencing some kind of a stressful event in your life, then you can at any time also become part of the vulnerable consumer segment. Black Friday is generally seen as an opportunity to purchase desired items at a reduced price. And this perception is shared by both vulnerable and non-vulnerable consumers. However, we have to take into consideration one psychological aspect when we think about the vulnerable consumers. So, vulnerability often leads to the perception of self-discrepancy, which is the gap between one's actual and the ideal self. Research indicates that when people perceive this self-discrepancy, they engage in compensatory consumption, meaning that they use various ways to address their self-discrepancy by purchasing, using, or consuming different products, services, and activities. Black Friday in this way can be seen as a way for vulnerable consumers to engage in compensatory consumption and hence increase their spending. So if Black Friday helps vulnerable consumers address the gap they have because of their vulnerabilities, it can be quite beneficial. For instance, if someone feels lonely and a Black Friday deal allows them to enjoy a communal dining at a restaurant, that is a positive outcome. Similarly, if a person's vulnerability stems from their financial scarcity, being able to purchase a durable good at a reduced price allows them to use their limited resources more efficiently. Another reason individuals engage in compensatory consumption is to restore the control they feel they've lost. Instead of directly addressing the perceived gap, they might turn to conspicuous consumption, hedonic consumption, or simply increase their overall spending. Since most Black Friday activities revolve around retail sales, for vulnerable consumers, this need to regain control can have negative consequences. For example, vulnerable consumers might buy more luxury goods, increase their discretionary spending, and overconsume. This is actually a pattern we observe during Black Friday, which is why it tends to have more negative than positive effects on vulnerable consumers. So considering all these factors, I believe Black Friday would be less problematic if we could reduce the percentage of the vulnerable consumers in our societies. Reducing financial and social inequalities and creating more inclusive societies would lead to fewer vulnerable consumers. Additionally, instead of focusing solely on retail sales, Black Friday could be used proactively and strategically to help vulnerable consumers address the self-discrepancy they feel due to their vulnerabilities.